We call it I Chose St. Joe's, and we're asking for all of you to get onto Facebook and Twitter and tell us why you chose St. Joe's. I have two helpers down here, both of whom have chosen St. Joe's. That's Elijah and Amy. And I chose St. Joe's, and I've been there a long time. I've been there since 1997, and I chose it simply because it is a hospital dedicated to our community. That's why we're here today, and why we've been here since the very beginning, supporting the arts. So we want to encourage all of you to support this wonderful festival as well. If you see the Bucket Brigade coming around, please make sure to kick in. It's very, very important to keep this festival going. Could you even imagine not having it in Bangor? I couldn't, I know that. So we need to make sure that we thank our virtuoso sponsors today, because they also helped make everything come to life today. The City of Bangor, let's make some noise in the city. They also made this possible. And of course, St. Joe's, we did it too. St. Joe's. So we want to encourage you. I have two gifts down here, great St. Joe's t-shirts. So the first person who has their $10 Mardi Gras beads to make a lot of noise might just get a shirt thrown at them. Oh, right there in the front, he's making a lot of noise. All right, wonderful. Please help me in welcoming Smokey McKean to the stage to introduce our wonderful performers this afternoon. Have a great time, everybody.
Well, welcome to our workshop this afternoon here on the topic of songs of work, worship, and love. Or maybe work, worship, love, or the lack thereof. There are a lot of songs about the other side of the coin with that, but when I saw the title of the workshop, at first I thought to myself, well, what else is there? Work, worship, and love. That covers about at least 90% of the songs that I know.
That doesn't pigeonhole us here tonight.
And I was trying to think of some other topics that wouldn't fall under those headlines, but there aren't that many. We have a wonderful group on stage, and I'm sure you've had the pleasure of hearing some of them sing this weekend. But the workshops sometimes give us an opportunity to be a little more informal, and you get to know the artists a little more, because they're not rehearsed for this performance. They're just taking it on the wing, and we'll see what happens. So I guess I'll introduce to you Andre Veloz from the Dominican Republic. I actually haven't had a chance to hear her sing this weekend, so I'm looking forward to this. So I asked her if she might start us out with something and tell us a little bit about her singing tradition.
Hello, everybody.
Hello.
Thank you for being here with us. And I sing bachata, and the bachata is what I like to call the Dominican or the Caribbean blues. And it's a music that is born from the brothels of the Dominican Republic, from the bars, when the people that migrated from the countryside to the capital for work, when they got their little paychecks, they will go there and cry. I don't know if either because they were missing their families and their towns, or because their paycheck was so small, but that's where Música de Amargue came from the lowest part of the Dominican society, and it has changed so much right now that now is accepted as part of the Dominican music. Before, it used to be very looked down into.
Swept under the rug.
Yes, but people anyway will dance it. We're like, oh, bachata. I don't dance that, I'm too fine for that, but it's feeling good. And you know what's funny? People, there is still that stigma about bachata. Even now, when I try to get gigs in certain places in New York, they will tell me, yeah, you can do rock, you can do Latin pop, but we don't really like bachata. If you're gonna do bachata, do fine bachata from Juan Luis Guerra, the more refined stuff, and he was one of the responsible people from getting it more into, helping it to be more accepted. But that's what they say. At the end, I said, okay, I will not do bachata. And at the moment of the gig, I do it, and everybody's happy and dancing. So.
The bachata tradition today is with a big band and a lot of dance music, as you just said. But are some of the roots of the music the more traditional songs in that style often sung without accompaniment? Back in the countryside, or?
Yeah, is basically part of the guitar tradition, like guitar music. Just like the trios that were so famous in Cuba, in the Dominican Republic, in Mexico, in Puerto Rico, and the boleros. The bachata is a deformation of the bolero that the people, when they wanted to go to those bars, they, we are somehow addicted to nostalgia. We like things that remind us of the people we love, and that's where the bolero comes in, with that sadness, that melancholy. But we also like to dance. We are hot-blooded people, Dominicans, and that's when the guitars took a fast pace, and that is when the instruments like the bongos came in, and when the guira, that is the, if you saw the concerts, Joel Guzman in the guira, their contribution to the bachata was to make it what it is today, more upbeat, more danceable, but it has that common denominator that is usually something about heartbreak or sadness. But it's very wonderful that we can dance that heartbreak away. So
maybe you can sing that heartbreak away for us right now.
Of course. I feel kind of naked without my musicians here to accompany me, but who can feel lonely with all of these gentlemen here? I feel so lucky. I'm like the queen on this stage. Me estás acabando, mujer consentida, mi corazoncito. Que no te olvido, que sí te quiero. And then, that's an old song. They had a woman talking underneath, like in the recording, and she's like, ay papi, ¿con qué que tú me quieres? Baby, what do you love me with? And then Marino, who is the singer of that song, comes back again and say, con el pecho y el corazón, con el pecho y el corazón. Con el pecho y el corazón, con el pecho y el corazón, con el pecho y el corazón, con el pecho y el corazón. And I don't know if you noticed, but it sounds very, very campesino. It sounds very peasant. It has like that jalaíto, that little swing of the word song, but with the mutation that is, again, about amargue, heartbreak.
Thank you. Matthew Byrne, and you've seen him sing, I'm sure, this weekend with the Dardanelles from the island of Newfoundland. A great singing tradition in Newfoundland. A lot of similarity, particularly the ballad singing of Newfoundland, with what was tradition in Maine, in the lumber camps of Maine, where songs from Ireland, England, songs made up at the time about things that happened in the woods, or people that some event had happened, and a ballad would be written to commemorate the event or commemorate the loss of somebody killed in the woods. And I know that the Newfoundland tradition also shares a lot of those kinds of songs. And the style of singing is very similar, particularly when it's unaccompanied. I heard Matthew do a song like that the other day.
Yeah, unaccompanied singing back home was something that I grew up with. I grew up with hearing a lot of the older people, just sharing songs, sitting around and sharing songs, and no instruments being touched. And And so I grew up hearing, kind of inheriting that repertoire, and a lot of the songs are, you mentioned the Lumberwoods, but when you live in a place like Newfoundland, the sea is pretty much the top theme when it comes to the ballad tradition. So most of them deal with, if they're going to deal with love or loss, or I forget what our work, yeah, absolutely. Then they're going to deal with that when it comes to working on the sea, depending on the sea, living on the sea, and so that's. See, if you get sick of sea songs easily, don't come to Newfoundland. So, will I do it? Yeah, okay, cool. Yeah, well, I'll do one that kind of speaks to exactly what we were just saying. It's a song that I got from my mother, and I asked her where she learned this song, and she told me she got it from her father, my grandfather. And I didn't know he was much of a singer, and I remember Mom saying, well, he wasn't much of a singer, but he had some songs. And that was a very common thing back home, to not necessarily be somebody who was known for being on the main stage, but still harboring this amazing repertoire, and so this is a song that it's about a shipping disaster of a ship that left Bonavista Bay coming into St. John's Harbor. And it's a song called The Loss of the Schooner Maggie. It's not too long. It's not one of those ballads where verse 14 comes around and the ship hasn't even left the harbor. So don't worry. Ye fishermen who know so well the dangers of the deep, come listen to a mournful tale and join your tears to weep for the loss of the schooner Maggie and 13 precious lives that leave so many homes bereaved of husbands, sons, and wives. At 10 for noon, November 5, the Maggie sailed away from a happy home in Brooklyn near Bonavista Bay. Light winds did guide her on her course, kind-hearted were the crew. When Friday evening off the Narrows a city came in view, our hopes were high and our hearts were glad we soon would reach the shore and turn to cash the fruits of toil upon the Labrador. Those city lights, they seem to greet and welcome us to town. When Captain London cried, "Oh boys, there's a steamer bearing down," straight unrelenting monster fierce did seek her prey to get. We bore straight on her, but we hoped her course could alter yet. We shouted loud in wild despair at late and awful crash. Next moment o'er our shattered craft, while the angry waves they dashed. And the scene that followed next, my God, is branded on my brain. And rather would I join the drum than witness it again, when shrieks heart-rending pierce the air, a desperate fight for life, as a brother saw a brother drown and a husband saw a wife. Of 23 who left their homes all on that fateful morn, 13 of them are hushed in death and never to return. For the name of the steamer Tiber will years to come. On the ears of Brooklyn people like the sound of a funeral drum. Thank you. Thank you. Oh, the loss of the funeral drum.
You're talking about your grandfather not being known as a singer in the community, but he knew a lot of songs, and that rings, from what I've heard from talking to old timers in Maine, that was the sign of a good singer, was that they knew a lot of songs, and they could sing them.
Some of the best songs come from people who aren't looking for an audience at all.
Exactly. And then the other thing I wanted to mention before we move along is, you noticed at the end of the song, Matthew dropped the melody out of his voice and spoke the last line of the song. And it's a common characteristic of Irish ballad singing, and that carried over to North America in Newfoundland and Maine. That was very common in the old Maine lumber ballads, that you would drop the melody.
Yeah, a lot of those songs, one of the reasons, I guess, in a practical sense, is because a lot of those songs can be a little long with no definitive ending. So that was the old fellow's way years ago of kind of saying, thanks for sticking with me, my song is to an end, we're done.
Exactly, yeah, that's what I've always figured was that, yeah. Otherwise you would be hoping maybe sometime the song would be over, and it wasn't until you heard that bit. Yeah, well sung. Thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Our next singer, to Matthew's left, is Mr. Wylie Gustafson from Montana. I guess you guys have heard him sing sometime this weekend as well. And so, a cowboy singer in Maine. Well, at first that might sound a little odd, but you know, we have a long tradition of cowboy and country and western music in Maine, particularly cowboy music, like all the old-time fiddlers, all the old string bands that played in Maine back in the 20s, 30s, 40s. They had radios, and they were listening to Gene Autry, and they were listening to Jimmy Rogers, and they were listening to yodeling, and believe it or not, most of the time they wore cowboy hats and boots and sometimes fringe jackets. And the cowboy singer as a style really took the whole country by storm. They were watching Tom Mix movies at the cinema, and so it wasn't an unknown style in Maine for many years. Hal Lone Pine, who came from Old Town, Maine. Harold Bro, his name was. I don't know, is anybody here old enough to remember listening to the Lone Pine Mountaineer? Yeah. Come and listen while I sing to you, I'm the Lone Pine Mountaineer. He had a theme song on the radio. And he yodeled, and he wore the cowboy clothes. And his wife, Betty Cody, who was also of French extraction, she grew up in Lewiston. She had an accent, a French accent that was to die for, but when she started to sing a cowboy song, she sounded like she'd just come off the plains. And it was amazing. She just passed away a few years ago, and she was still singing up into her 80s, I think. Anyway, there's a long heritage of cowboy singing in Maine, so we're lucky to have Wylie here with us today.
Great to be here.
You have a song for us?
Sure. You know, our music comes from our lifestyle. I come from 4 generations of cattle ranchers and kind of a horse culture up there in northern Montana. I haven't left it. It's what inspires me to write a lot of my music. You know, I do write songs about love or lost love every once in a while, but most of my songs are inspired by the landscape, by the people. You know, in the cowboy culture, there's such a strong bond and relationship between the cowboy and the land, and so you know, we live in that lifestyle. It's surprising how we know when the moon's full or new, or when exact time the sun's going to rise, when the grass greens up, you know, when the protein hits. We know all that stuff just from raising cattle. We have to know it to be good cowboys. And so there's always been this real strong bond between the cowboy and the land and the horses. So I'm actually going to do a song that kind of speaks to the horse. You know, our working culture, the horse is pretty much a family member because we rely on him so much, our partner. You see some ranches use four-wheelers now, but still where we live, the horse is the main part of how we gather cattle and work cattle. There's a few small ranchers that use four-wheelers and whatnot, but they're still a really big part of our culture and have been for centuries now. So I love to sing about the horse, write about the horse, and this is a song called To Ride. God, the mighty architect, a noble beast he did perfect, with delicate ear and arching neck, and hooves that dare to fly. To the stirrup I am drawn, freedom found and faith reborn, I'm carried through the raging storm to Revelation's door. The song, the rhythmic roll, the thrilling thrum, our feet that echo like a drum, an anthem to my soul. Ring of spur, rattle of bit, my heart treasures every trip, as across the sod we wheel and rip, with roaring in my ear. Deep beneath the prairie ground, where the horses graze all around, casting shadows upon my bones. And I'll take that final ride up across the great divide, forevermore to be astride. On down to the stars.
I don't know how many of you, down in the front row, perhaps you can get a good view of Wylie's guitar. But out in the back, you might not notice, the horse is featured very prominently all over that guitar. It's beautiful piece of work.
18 horses. That was the size of my herd when I had this guitar built, so I had 18. Wow. They all have names, and a few of them have brands on them too.
So how many horsepower is that guitar?
Yeah, that's 18 horse.
18 horse, yeah. Beautiful. That's quite a piece of work. All right, well, so we had a little bit of song of love, song of loss, song of work, and these boys down to the left side of the stage are members of the Sensational Royal Lights. I'm sorry, yeah, Sensational Royal Lights. And we're gonna have a chance to hear their singing style maybe kind of broken down a little bit and without the accompaniment that they've been performing with at the festival with the keyboards and the guitar and the bass and the drums. Now we're just gonna hear the raw sound of gospel voices, and it's a beautiful sound. And I can't introduce everybody by name because I've got 4 names on my in my head, and there's 5 of you there. So we've got Tyrone Elliott and Freddie Elliott and Carl Slocum and Ryan Elliott, and who else?
Kareem.
All right. All right. Well, welcome you guys. Tyrone, I guess I'll hand things over to you, and maybe you can tell us a little bit about about your style of singing the gospel music. And,
All right, first I want to say, wow, man, if you weren't so good at what you do, you know, I'd say you cheated by bringing your guitar.
yeah, right.
But you're so good at what you do. I said, no, that was fair. That was fair. Well, we come from a family of singing. My grandfather, he actually started our group 60 years ago. So we've been a little bit more than 60 years in doing this. And my granddad, he was a part of a family of a group that was named the Royalites. But then he and my grandmom, they started having children, and they ended up having 17. Oh my God. So he looked at the boys and he said, look, I'm gonna keep these boys out of trouble. I'm gonna put them in, I'm gonna start a group. And since I was there with my grandmom at that time, and my brother and me, you know, she kind of put a little plastic guitar in my hand and shoved me aside the head and put me in there too. So, and that was 60 years ago. And after a while, we just started to sing, and Freddie, he's one of the first ones there, and you know, we started having a bit of success, and our name was initially the Royalites, and then we started, you know, changed the name to the Sensational Wylie. So we've been singing, you know, for many years, and you know, we had the loss of some other brothers and things like that, but God has always provided for us, and bringing someone else, you know, from the family, you know, right into the fold. And 3 years ago, my son, he ended up joining the group, and that gives us probably another 60 years. Sensational Wylie. Even before Ryan, we call him Peanut, but Kareem, he actually was one of my other brothers. He's his